Heart to Heart. My name is April, and my special guest today is Georgia Cammann. Georgia is a galactic shaman. She is based out of Washington State, and she's anchoring the light up there as a grid worker and as a person that does a lot of community work. I'm thrilled to have her on. I've known her for years. We met in Mount Shasta at a very small spiritual retreat. And we have a mutual friend that lives in Tasmania, of all places. So I'm just excited to talk to you today. Georgia, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, April. I appreciate you having me on. It's nice to share our stories and whatever we have that might help the collective, because we're all doing that. And right now, as you know, so many people are waking up that I know people are always looking for, information and questioning what's going on with their own journeys. And sometimes it's helpful just to hear how other people are doing and what their journeys were like. I've done that so many times myself. So thank you for having me on.
My pleasure. For my audience that doesn't know who you are, can you just give us a little background about who Georgia is and your spiritual journey and how you got to where you are now?
Yeah.
Wherever you want to go.
Really all synchronicity, but I am a healer, and I have been working in the field of metaphysics for 22 years now. And just, hindsight's been a great teacher for me. I trained in a whole lot of things, but I early on, I never thought I'd be doing this. It's so funny how we end up doing what we're doing by kind of a divine contract that we didn't even know we had. And so as the time goes on, you start to have more and more respect for that. But way back in, hate to date myself here, but way back in 1974, I had broken away from my a very restrictive religious background that I didn't feel a kinship to at all. And it broke my parents' heart. And I broke away by moving with a boyfriend on a whim from Seattle to Flagstaff, Arizona, with nothing but a little trailer. And I was 21, and I got there, and my parents were absolutely crushed. They cried their eyes out. They thought I'd lost my soul. And, it was very painful to hurt them like that. It was very stressful. But I realized that boyfriend was there as a catalyst to pull me out of what I felt was cultish.
Right.
And so when I was there, I was only there a year, but I met some Native American neighbors next door that had a strong effect on me, because I'd never met a Native American who I got to know really well. And they told me stories about being pulled off the street on the reservation by the church, Catholic Church, and forced to go to like orphanage type places where they were not allowed to speak their native language. They were just taken away from they were kidnapped. And so that was surprising to me. And that started to make me really stop and think, because my life had been kind of sheltered,
I'll just tell you one really quick thing about my grandmother, born in 1904, and she lived to be 97. She would, I'm a register with the Choctaw Nation because she was a registered Choctaw with original Dawes role. When she was 4, she was taken away from, she and her siblings were taken away from her family and put into one of those schools. They were in at least a couple of schools. Their hair was cut off, and they weren't allowed to speak their own native language.
Right.
And I can't even imagine at age a 4-year-old and God knows what kind of experiences they have,
Yeah.
which she would have never talked about, and she didn't.
Right. And so then I heard about a class called Silva Mind Control. It was way, way back in the day. And it was one of the first classes in metaphysics that came out, but I didn't like the name. Mind
Right.
control, that didn't work for me.
Yeah.
But I went ahead and went out of curiosity, and it opened up questions in my mind about what was going on beyond here. And then I read the Carlos Castaneda book series,
Mhm.
and something woke up in me again. And I went, this feels very familiar to me. And I felt like I was going home reading those books, and I couldn't explain it. Finally, didn't work out because I was 21 and I came back, but the change had been made. And from then on, I think you slowly start to wake up, but you don't normally, waking up is a process, not an event. And all along the way, I questioned, but I didn't really start to wake up until I was living with my family here back in 22 or 2001. I was living with my family in another state, and I got this strong urge that we need to get back to Seattle, and that's where a lot of our family and friends are. And I kept waiting for the opportunity, waiting for the opportunity. Finally, it came up, and we moved back here. And I was in my house one day unpacking, and my neighbor came over from across the street. And she said, there's a metaphysical class I want to take, but they won't teach it unless there's at least 2 students. Or would you be interested? And I looked it up. It was weak, on the website. I go, well, it really doesn't. Do you want to have a better life? Do you want to, work with more creativity? And I'm going, yeah, sign me up, So I was kind of dragging my feet, and she got kind of terse with me. She says, well, are you going to sign up or not? And I went, well, geez, okay. So I signed up, and we went to the class. And after the first class, she said, I don't want to go anymore. It was requiring shadow work. It was requiring you to look and work on yourself. It wasn't about looking out there at all the rainbows and, the love. It was about actual
Everyone.
hard
Yeah.
self work. And
Yeah.
that wasn't what she wanted to do. So the teacher said, I knew when she came that she brought you for the class, and that's okay. I'll teach it to you by yourself. And so that started a 10-year
Wow.
study, and I was in this group for 10 years. It turned out not to be the place for me, but I learned a whole bunch. And I was like this eager student
Mhm.
where something woke up in me, and I had curiosity that just I couldn't contain it. I had to know more.
Mhm.
It was an internal fire in your belly, which a lot of starseeds understand.
Yeah.
So I went through that, and they made me reread the entire Carlos Castaneda series again. And I started to understand the physics of energy. And the teacher said, if I'm going to teach you healing, I'm going to teach you how it works. And it's all based in physics. And I started to see so many unbelievable things that I didn't think were possible,
Mhm.
that I started to open my mind up more and more and more. And the more I opened my mind up, the more stuff started to flow in that was new information for me. And I was the quintessential kid in the front of the classroom, which I never did in regular school. I was in the back daydreaming. But this time I was a student, eager and ready to learn. And so I finally parted ways with them, but that sent me on a catalyst through some adventures, I call them, that were kind of like a dark night of the soul. And people think about dark nights of the soul as being a terrible thing, but we don't learn things when everything's handed to us easily. We learn through experience. And I started to understand that. And I had to understand a lot of things about who I was. And when that question as a healer, it's the number one question that comes up. Who am I and what's my purpose here?
Right.
Over and over and over. Most healers will tell you that.
Yeah.
And So I realized we have this inner desire for that. And people kept saying, do you have a homesickness? Because you're going to get a feeling of homesickness and you're not going to know where it comes from. And I was like, no, I'm not feeling homesick, you know? So fast forward to 2011, it was right after the market crash here, and it was not a good time to sell your house or do anything like that. And I sat up in bed one night and went, I have to move. We've got to move to another place. And I thought my husband would think I was Looney Tunes because the timing was so bad. And something came over him and he went, yeah, okay. It was like, I've had I've had something come in so many times with me that created things around me that helped me do what I needed to do. And this was one of those times. And I put the house on the market, and my good friend was my real estate agent. And she said, you better plan on 4 to 5 months of it being on the market. This is a terrible market. And it sold in 2 weeks. And
Awesome.
then I was driving up a street, not like 7 minutes from where I lived. And up at the top of the street was a house. That's the first time I saw a for sale sign. It's the second time I'd been there. And the second, they were like days apart because I was looking at places that I might want to buy. It just went on the market, family that had built it years ago, and it needed a lot of work, but it was on acreage. It was in the woods. And I was trying to get space. I wanted space. I didn't want to live on top of other people. And it's very hard to find. It was a very odd thing that it showed up when it did.
Uh-huh.
So I moved in, and the very first night I was by myself, and I wasn't really used to the house. And I was laying in bed, and I saw there was a light on at the other end of the house in the kitchen. So I went, oh, I forgot to turn the light off. So I walk in there. It's a full moon. It's not a light. And
Wow.
I'm standing at the window, and I started to cry. And I said, I am so tired, so tired. I had been through 10 years of, I don't know what to call them, except they were shamanic, supernatural experiences that were off the charts, and it had really rattled me. It had drained my adrenals, from the fight or flight of just being freaked out all the time. And I heard a male voice behind me, like standing right behind me, as clear as day. And he said, we brought you here to heal. You're safe now. And one of my teachers, who who I'm talking about, she prefers not to be named publicly. She did a energy session with me that next week, and we breathed in violet and we breathed out blue 3 times. And she said, from here on out, for the rest of this lifetime, she's off limits and you're not to touch her again. And it stopped. It all stopped. And what I've done since 2011 is be in this house and on this land and heal. And that's what I did. And I healed from it. And I feel like now, with this huge shift in consciousness,
Mhm.
I'm supposed to stay here for a little while longer, but the time is coming that it's time for me to move on. So I'm going to trust when that happens. But the things that happen to us in hindsight, when we look back, we realize they all happen for a reason. The relationships we had that broke up, the experiences we had that turned out horrible. You look back now and you're thankful because you see that there was a reason, a reason that we don't always understand. So I've learned, that's one thing I've really learned, is to trust, trust and let go. I have a sign up in my healing room, and it says trust, let go, and allow. And I put it up there for my clients, but I put it up there to remind myself,
Right.
that we don't have to know all the answers, but
Right.
we just have to keep working on ourselves.
And Georgia, you do QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis therapy. How did you get into that?
You know, I heard about Dolores Cannon years ago, and I started to read her books, and it really resonated with me, and I thought it was fascinating. And when I was training to be a healer, I trained in a lot of modalities. I'm a Reiki master. There's so many modalities that teach different ways to do the same thing, and different things resonate with different people. But it got to the point where I was hearing the same thing over and over again in different formats. And I realized what I was doing was sitting in fear that I wasn't going to do it right. And that if I, took one more class or one more course, I'd be that much. And finally, my higher self said, stop. It's time. It's just time to get on the horse and start riding. And I think that's typical of a lot of people. You want to make sure you get it right. Just a lot of different modalities, but I started to find for myself that the part of healing that I enjoyed the most, that had most passion for, was dealing with the emotional. And the emotional, as you know, physical, mental, spiritual are all connected. But the emotional and the spiritual, I saw so many changes in the physical and mental from addressing it that way, that I feel that that's my niche. And so I kind of became a metaphysical counselor, especially for young star seeds. Number of years ago, probably 15 years ago, I started working on a newsletter, and I called it Soul Food. And I was going to put it out every month. And I put out my first soul food, newsletter on people's emails, and I hit send, and then I thought, I'm going to take a ride and run some errands. And I drove back into a place that near my house, but that I'd never been. It was a strip mall. And all of a sudden I saw this coffee shop called Soul Food that I never knew was there. And I went, okay, what's going on here? So I went inside and I started talking to some of the young people in there. It was a small music venue / coffee shop bookstore. And I realized that it was a magnet place for a lot of young people who came, homeless, not homeless, just young people wanting, full of creativity, wanting to express themselves. And so I decided to start going in there a couple times a week, and I would do card readings just to put my foot in the door and get to know the people in there. And I went there for about 7 years, and I met
Wow.
another whole tribe of people like my age. One's a well-known astrologer, and several other people, musicians and poets, and these kids started to come in, and I would see groups of these young people, teenagers up to mid 20s. And I could tell who the star seeds were. Somehow I could just tell. And I had some of the most amazing conversations, and I'm still in touch with a lot of them, but they were looking for something. They were going through their angst and all the things that you go through at that age, but they were looking for some kind of connection because they felt different, as we all know how that feels. Those of us who came here, that's a classic case of how we all kind of feel. And so I worked with them for a long time, but the whole synchronicity of that was not lost on me. One of the main teachers I had, and I had 5 female teachers show up over the years that were older than me. All of them had an amazing piece of the puzzle of who I was and why I was here. None of them had all the picture, but I put them together, and so it was fascinating. And one of them is a galactic astrologer, a longtime galactic astrologer, and she saw in my chart, she said, you're a galactic shaman, and you have crystal mastership in this lifetime. And I really didn't know what she meant by either one of those things, but I was just had an open mind. And she tried to explain that galactic shaman work from the sky to the earth, and earth shaman work from the earth to the sky, is how she. I immediately went home and tried to research it, and there wasn't anything on the internet on it. And then all of a sudden, slowly but surely, that term started to show up more and more and more. I think it just trickled out into the collective. And she said, "You're going to work internationally one day." And I had no idea what that meant. And so I just kind of sat with it. I really kind of brushed it off, but I just kept it in the back of my mind. And sure enough, slowly but surely, I started to run into these people, mostly on Facebook at the time. This was a few years ago. And they were like-minded souls. I could tell they were soul family, and they were galactic shaman. I could tell. And we were doing things on the grid work of the planet, but we were doing things out in our dream time. We were very active, and many times we had the same dreams and we saw each other. We didn't see exactly what we were doing, but we knew we were working on something together. You know, most of what we do isn't linear, as you well know. So, you know, you just learn to trust. You really, really learn to trust. The seed crystals I received from that one particular teacher were tiny little seed crystals that had been picked up by a diver in the Jeffrey mines, which are under the water in Arkansas. Arkansas is a state rich in crystals. It's just teeming with crystals. And
Are those old Atlantean crystals in there?
I believe so. I believe so. And they're tiny, very tiny, almost like needle-like, but they're pointed on both ends. You know, it's unusual, but they hired a diver to go in back in, I think, 1983, maybe. He went in, got the crystals, had them shipped to Egypt, to the Giza Pyramid, where my teacher and some other people were working on some energy work. And they took them into the Queen's chamber. They were instructed intuitively, and they charged them up for 2 days, I believe. And they carry an extreme amount of power. And then she was told to put them in a vault and not talk about them again until she was instructed. And so years later, she was finally instructed to take them out and start intuitively passing them out to starseeds. And that's what she did. And they went all over the world. They had 100 people right off the bat early on spend their own time and money to go to Ayers Rock, which is Uluru in the center of Australia there, a very sacred site for the Aboriginal people. And they all went there and planted them there, not knowing the other one was doing it. Everybody was getting the same kind of information. And I have taken some there myself, but they started to go everywhere. And when you'd pass them out, if you got them and you wanted to pass them out to others, you just intuitively knew who people would show up. It was a very intuitive process that was highly orchestrated from somewhere else. And we were just the kind of the worker bees, so to speak. I put them on grid work on the earth. I put them in streams and rivers, and I've watched the violets spread out, and it has to do with the divine feminine energy, and it has to do with connecting the earth back to humanity, where we've lost our connection there in so many ways. And it was truly a fascinating, probably 10 years that I did that. And then it started to get quiet again. And I realized that that time had come and gone, that those had been placed where they needed to be placed.
I was going to ask you, there was some extraterrestrial influence on charging those, or around when it was when those crystals were supposed to have been charged also.
Yeah, there was a lot going on there. There was a lot going on. The small group of people in there were definitely led to go there. One was Shirley MacLaine, the famous actress. She had written one of the first metaphysical books, and she was present there as well. But I think it's the Pleiadians. Each pyramid there has a person that they hire to watch over the place, a caretaker. And when the Egyptian man who was there saw this group come, he knew who they were. He was he just intuitively knew that he had to let them in to do this. This wasn't a, tourist thing. This was
Yeah,
something
yeah,
totally different. So that was very interesting. I learned a lot from that teacher. And when you're looking for a teacher, you never know what they're going to look like. It could be a child. It could be your little starseed next to you teaching you something, which is what's going to happen more and more. We're here
yeah,
to support
yeah.
the children. And our job as starseeds is to help protect them and stand up for them. And that's part of my role here, very much so, with young people and children. And finding that one teacher, I literally had, when you have an awakening, a spiritual awakening, it creates a burning desire, curiosity to know more and to start remembering. You're actually remembering
Right.
a lot of what you already know. And so you can spend a lot of time, too much time, going down rabbit holes from time to
Uh-huh.
time. There's times for that, and there's times you have to unplug, step back, get grounded again. And I was having one of those times one day, and my brain was just full of so much information. I thought, I just got to unplug. So I thought, what can I do to be mindless? Well, I think I'll just go flip on the TV, and a National Geographic was the
Uh,
first thing that came up. Well, it was about the crystal mines in Mexico that they found that were underwater, and they had been full of water. They were like a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, massive tree trunk sized crystals. And I was watching it, and I was thinking, wow, I can't even imagine um, what kind of resonance that would have in that area to have those under the ground. And at the very end, I saw it was funny because there was something wrong with the picture on the TV. It was bleeding across each other and stuff. And so I looked at the bottom and I saw a website, and I keyed it in, and there was a woman's email address, and she said, if you have any questions about this, I'd be happy to answer them. I went to these 10 years ago. So I wrote her an email, and I didn't really even expect to hear back, but I just said, did you find anything out about the resonance there? And she called me right back the next day, and she said, I was told 10 people would call me off that website, and you're the 10th. And I'll tell you anything you want to know. And then she said, there's somebody I think you need to meet. And she gave me my teacher's name. I would have never known about her otherwise. The teacher, for the very first time, she had a Starseed gathering. And this was, 2012 was the first one, key date. And she invited a group of people who were Starseeds who had the galactic, the astrological numbers that lined up for this. And she invited us all to this retreat. And I went, and it shot me out into another level of the galaxy that I wasn't even aware of. I mean, my whole world just expanded from there, and I started having unusual experiences, is the only way I can put it. And everyone was teaching me who I was and what my role was, and you know, how to get past some of the uh things that come up. We all have our trials, and not everybody's meant to have supernatural trials. It has to do with just us and our soul contracts and who we are and our part here. And they're all different. There's no right or wrong. Um,
And no comparing.
no comparing, no comparing. You just can't. And it's easy to do, but you just can't. Just being authentically yourself is part of being sovereign. And that is what we're here to sow back into the population is sovereignty, because they've lost their way. A lot of them, as we know, they're disempowered, they're in victimhood, and that's exactly what we don't want to be.
Correct.
But there was one time, speaking of strange experiences that kind of start to give you a sense of who you are, you just don't rule anything out. I was sitting with a group of people that I was in my healing community with. It was a large healing community between the US and Canada over there. And we're having coffee one day, and out of my mouth, from I have no idea where, I said, I'm going to have to die for what I believe in this lifetime. And I went, and everybody stopped and looked at me, and I went, I don't even know why I said that. That is the weirdest thing. It just came out of my mouth. And I started to have these, a feeling coming in. It was almost, I would have nightmares, but I would constantly be feeling like, I don't even know how to explain it. It was really hard to put into words. I was almost tortured by it. I started to feel like I was having a soul death, like my body life force was leaking out of my body, and I couldn't explain it, and it was all energetic, and I couldn't figure out who to go to, and it got worse and worse until I got to the point where if I woke up in the morning, I would just sit and hold my sides and rock, because I could feel something was taking my life force away, and I didn't know what to do about it. I couldn't go to a counselor. I couldn't go to a doctor. I couldn't go to a clergy. I couldn't go to, none of the healers knew what I was talking about. They thought I probably a little off too. And it got worse and worse. And then I went to New York, and I would walk across the street to a Starbucks, and I would grab the handle, and my hand would crash into the glass, and I'd realize the handle was over a few inches. It was like dimensionally, the dimensions weren't adding up anymore. And I was trying to put on a good face for all these people I'm with, trying to be pleasant, family members, but inside I was just, I was dying a slow death. And so just happened to, just before I left, go to a new age bookstore, and there was a shaman there, and she was giving some type of a presentation. And so I listened, and I remembered her name, and she lives in Portland, 3 hours from me. So as soon as I got home, I called her and I said, I don't know how to explain this, but I am having a soul ache, and I can't stop it. And I felt like where it was going to lead me was into a comatose state. I was having a harder and harder time trying to keep myself tuned into a reality here and not just like drifting off somewhere. I felt like I was in a dream state. So she said, well, you're going to have to come here. We're going to have to do a soul retrieval. And so we picked a date and time, and she says, make sure, promise me you will not try to drive back. You'll be in an altered state. Got all that out of the way. Got there. Her boyfriend was drumming and keeping me grounded. And she said, this will be about an hour and a half it'll take. So want you to lay down here. She started rattling, he started drumming, and I don't remember anything after that. I just left my body. And the next thing I saw is I was on a horse, and I was a young Native American male, and I was going into battle. And I remembered that I was in my dreams before I went to this, I was hearing this screaming in my dream, and I couldn't see myself, but I knew it was coming from it. It was coming from my third chakra, and it was it was full of rage and anger and fear, and it was blowing out like a tornado in front of me and obliterating everything in front of it, and then the dream would end. Well, I was had that same dream, or that same scream in my dream. And in my dream, I was screaming it from my mouth, and it was me preparing myself to go into battle because I knew I wasn't going to survive. And
Mhm.
so I was mentally trying to get myself in that position. And then the next thing I remember is kind of coming to, and the shaman and her boyfriend's eyes are about this big. And they said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "What?" They said, "The rattle exploded." And the beads were all over the floor, and they were picking up pieces of beads. And she said, "You and I went in, and there was a very dark energy from a past life that had a hook in you energetically. And
Mhm.
we took them out. We took it out. It's gone." And she said, "And we did it in half the time it normally takes me to do it." So we must have been a good team. But I got up, and I never ever had that happen again. It left, the whole feeling left, everything left.
Mhm.
And that night I had a dream about a white wolf, but I knew that started to really open my eyes up to how much is really out there and what we're dealing with, and that the reality here is so tiny. It's a slice. It's just a slice of so many lifetimes we live side by side, and our poor little human brains can barely grasp the
Right.
reality of what's out there. But it all those kinds of experiences left me with a wider and wider picture, and the feeling that it's time to always not have an opinion on everything,
Mhm.
but just to get quiet and observe. Just observe. You don't have to label things right, wrong, or anything else. That's kind of a program. It just is what is, and you can not know the answer to something, and as enough time goes by, the truth is always presented one way or the other. So it's been an amazing journey for me. I had many, many experiences like that. I think we've all had our own kind.
I think that that is the perfect example to show how, even though our conscious mind may not be able to conceive of it, all of our previous lifetimes, those energies of who we are, can blend
Yeah.
in to this current reality and affect us physically, which
Yeah.
brings me to the quantum healing hypnosis therapy, because through that, you can get in touch with those other aspects that might be affecting the person in this lifetime, such as,
Right.
have you had some interesting experiences with that?
I did quite a few of them, and it really depended on the person. It's I learned as a healer a long time ago, you're there to support the client. You can't heal anybody. The
Right.
client has to heal themselves through their own shadow work and their own true desire. You have to have a real desire that no matter what, you want to heal, and
Uh-huh.
you've got to be willing to do it. And there were people I ran into that everybody came thinking they wanted to do it, but as it got into it, some didn't really want to look there. But there's information that came up, and I could feel it flow through me. And I would tell them what I saw. And then the others that were ready, there was a lot of life changing answers for them that came through. And what's coming, you're the practitioner is the facilitator, but the information's coming through their higher self, and they have to learn to trust it. It's a great exercise in learning how to trust yourself, and really paying attention to the first thing in your intuition. The first thing that pops into your head is almost always the right one.
Mhm.
My brain has misled me many times, but my intuition when I really key in like that, is never wrong. And it may not give you all the details, because maybe you don't need to know all the details, but it will give you the bigger picture, and but we caught physical things on people sometimes that they didn't know they had, and they went and checked it out, and it was great that they did find out, because they were able to do something. Sometimes it was a catalyst for them understanding who they are and who they were before they even came here, and it gave them an opportunity to get a deeper understanding of themselves. It's fascinating. It's an amazing tool to use, and more people are starting to figure that out, which is great.
Right.
The on the health too, when you come to, when you're doing your shadow work,
Mhm.
which is basically just stalking yourself, and you're questioning, you get very mindful. I know I'm speaking to the choir here. You get very mindful, and you start to pay close attention to what your thoughts are, and what your words are, and what, not to mention your actions. And you start, when you react, you question it. Why am I reacting that way? And you start to go back down through the layers, and it may not feel like you're getting very far, but in hindsight, once again, which is a great teacher, you start to see over time the effect that that's had, that you didn't even realize was happening. So there's a trust involved there. But as I started to do my shadow work, I was really, and I guess, we'll never really run out of it. There's always going to be shadow work to do. And you go, oh, that old thing came up again, but it gets better. It does get better. You're always learning, and you're supposed to learn. But my health issues, anything I had left over time, I had really bad asthma. I had an inhaler for years. I had severe allergies. I had an eating disorder at one time. I had digestive issues. One by one, they all disappeared. And it was so subtle that one day it was like looking back and going, oh my gosh, I don't have anything, And so a lot of, even our health issues are here to teach us. And once you learn the lesson, a lot of times, if that's in your contract, they leave. It's amazing.
Get into the same thing. I was shown literally the cells themselves, they're holding the lower frequency consciousness. So
Hmm.
as you release that lower frequency consciousness by your shadow work, you're able to embody more of your own higher consciousness, and the higher frequencies heal your physical body.
Yes, exactly. I talk to myself.
I
I
do
talk to
too.
myself
I do
just like
too.
I do rocks and trees, because there's a consciousness in everything.
Absolutely.
But the earth is a healer, a natural healer, and we're being um, really strongly encouraged energetically to start going back to the natural medicine. There was a one ailment that I've had that I still have, and I've not figured out, and I have dug deep, and I'm sure the answer will come someday. But I have an essential hand trimmer in my left hand. So my hand shakes in my left hand, and it's been passed down from my dad to my sister and I. It's not life threatening, but it's very annoying, and it's getting worse. So it's getting, because I'm left-handed, it's hard to paint, which I
Oh,
love
yeah.
to do. It's hard to write. So I went to Jamaica for some humanitarian work I do there, and I went a day early, and I thought, you know what? I really want to meet a bush doctor, because that's their healers there. And so I walking out of my hotel room, and a guy rides up on a bike, and he said, you want to buy some ganja? And I said, I'm not looking for any ganja, but I am looking for a bush doctor. Do you know one? And he said, well, I'm one, and I come from a long line of them. So you can't make this stuff up. So I ended up spending the day with him. He introduced me to his family. you know, they're all kind of on the hustle because that's how they live. So, I mean, I did spend some money with trinkets and things where I, you know, wasn't a great amount. But we started talking and he said, I've got some healing springs. He noticed my hand. He said, that would help you. And I said, well, I'm willing to give it a try. So I went up 10 miles with him and a friend of his who was a taxi driver, meaning he had a car that actually ran. And we go up there, and I'm thinking, do I really want to go up with two strange men that I just met? But something told me to go. I was listening to my intuition. And so they pull over the side of the road and they start to head into the jungle. I said, you know, you guys seem really nice, but I'm not going into the jungle with two strange men. He says, you don't have to. It's right over the bushes there. And sure enough, there's a Rastafarian cave with all their paintings on it and this amazing aqua colored water that when you put your tongue up to it, it tastes sweet, sugary, and it's crystal clear. And
Wow.
so we sat in there and he said, just put your hand in there and let's just chat for a while and see. So we smoked some ganja, sat there in the healing springs, talked about spirituality. And I'm thinking, how did I get here? This is unbelievable, you know, that I'm here. But I kind of paid attention to my hand, you know, but I kept it in there. And then we got out and he took me in the jungle and made up some potions for me to take with me when I left for some things they use for medicines. And the the tremor was gone. It was completely gone for the first time in many, many years. And it left for 2 months probably. And then it started to slowly but surely come back. And that was the only time I have ever been able to affect my hand that way. So that was amazing to me. And I started to realize even more how much is out there in the indigenous cultures and their knowledge
Huh.
and how we need to go back to those, you know, or
Yeah.
go back to the natural healing.
Do you do any earthing, grounding?
Lots, yeah. If I had a prescription pad, I would be writing for every client. First thing I write is get out there, especially these young star seeds that are so stressed out right now with everything going on and at their age. I constantly talk to them about that. That it feels like something's shifting on the earth here a little bit, and our grounding might be starting to come from within ourselves more and more now as things are shifting and changing. But there was also, as far as health, when I went to one of the Starseed gatherings in Arkansas, because I went to more than one, I had a very serious lower back problem that was to the point where I couldn't roll over in bed at night without being in agony. It was so painful. And it was looking like the only option was surgery. And I didn't want to get surgery on my back. And I went to sleep one night in a room by myself at the hotel. And something woke me up in the middle of the night about 2 o'clock. And I noticed a blue cast to the room and like a light. Somebody had a blue light on or something. And out of my peripheral vision, I saw a blue energy being about 3 feet tall standing next to my bed. And it startled me because of all the strange things I'd been through. I kind of went, and it disappeared instantly. And I thought, oh my gosh, you know, I'm sorry, because I realized I felt benevolence from it. And I
Right.
thought, no, 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 don't leave, don't leave. I didn't mean it, but it didn't come back. And I was kind of in a state of shock. I finally went back to sleep and I got up the next morning and my back was healed 100%. And it's never bothered me again, ever. And I just, that blew me away. And I came back and tried to tell my family, my back is healed. And I told them what happened. They looked at me like they couldn't hear it. They thought I was nuts.
Uh-huh.
They just,
Yeah.
and they keep asking, how's your back? And I go, how many times do I have to repeat myself? Don't ask me this again. I've told you it's healed. You know, but there are so many things out there that we can
Right.
get help with, that we have a team of our soul family behind us
Mhm.
and our higher consciousness. We don't need to rely on the exterior things that we tend to rely on, our news sources and things like that. There are teachers and healers out there, especially right now, to support us, but we don't need to rely on them. We can go and pick and choose sometimes to get an uplifting message, but it's just not important. It's really not. I don't know how you feel about that.
Well, I think that the best thing anyone can do is really tune into their own inner guidance,
Yeah,
listen to that intuition because it becomes stronger as you do. And, you are your own best healer. There's a lot of people out there like you've told us about that synchronistically will show up in your life to help you go in a certain direction or actually perform healing on you when that's the case and that's needed. But I really think, as we all know, we're here to assist people just to get back to themselves and not give their power away. Put
right.
center back on yourself, and that's not being selfish. That's being authentic and, like you said, sovereign. And that I think
Yeah,
that's like I shared on Facebook a little message that you had written because it was just beautiful. And it was talking about taking responsibility, not being the victim. And
yeah, yeah. The sovereignty, and because of what we've been through the last few years, especially,
Mhm.
it's hard for a lot of people to be authentic because they're afraid of the repercussions if their authenticity doesn't line up with the narrative that's out
Right.
there. But we're at a time now when the courage is really, really important.
Mhm.
That's the other thing. The fear, has been planted there, as we know, to keep people down and controlled, and it's worked very well. But people are busting out of it, and it takes courage to make it. People finally got to a point where I think a lot of people adopted the feeling that I would rather lose my life than live like this. And that's what the awakening brought everybody to. And they went, I choose life and I'm not going to live this way. And that gave people uh, it gave people the courage to stand up, and you don't have to be shouting from the rooftop anymore,
Mhm.
but you can hold it within yourself and the people you deal with every day. You don't have to tuck yourself in. You don't have to make yourself small.
Mhm.
You can live a big life. We're meant to live a big life. We are big, powerful energy. If everybody knew how powerful they were,
Yeah.
this place would be, the problems here would be over in a heartbeat, but it's a process, as always.
And energetically, fear constricts your energy.
Yes,
And
it
so
does.
that's a real thing that's been used against us. So
Hmm.
I think we're running out of our time here, Georgia.
Yeah.
I could talk all day to you, though.
Yeah, yeah, I love you, April. You're
Uh,
great.
I
It's
I love
always nice.
you.
I'm glad that you
Sure.
got this channel. And Galactic Grandmother, yes,
Yeah.
perfect, perfect.
Well, we'll have to do it again.
Yeah,
I think you've got so much more to share. I'm sure there may be some questions from the audience, about different things. And I just really think it's important that by you sharing your personal story, I mean, I have so many parallels to your story
no
and
doubt.
so many metaphysical experiences that don't conform to this 3D concept of who we are, I think it's important for us to share so that people can realize,
Yeah.
we are not crazy. We are just giving you an idea of what our true spiritual nature is inside this human body.
Yeah, absolutely. I think people really need to hear that right now so that they know that they're being pushed out of the nest, so to speak. And it's
Yeah.
nice to know there's a soft landing of people at the bottom that understand.
Well, my dear, I will say thank you so much
Yeah,
for being on.
you're
And
welcome. Thank you.
so you have a wonderful day, and we'll talk
Thanks, you
soon.
too. I'm pretending like it's spring. It's almost spring here.
Yeah.
So,
All
all
right.
right. Much love.
Thank you.
Thank
Much
you,
love to you.
April.
All righty.
Talk to you
Bye-bye.
later.